Greetings, friends. I want to tell you about the terror of total freedom. So let's go for a little ride here. I'll tell you about the terror of total freedom. Excuse me. I don't know how this is going to go. Let's see if I can not get into an accident. How's that? Good enough? So, when I was 22, well, no, when I was 20, my mother passed away. That was awful. May she rest in peace. But I only had one sibling, so she left us a lot of money. And so I was really lucky. God has blessed me in a lot of ways. I've definitely been blessed by God. Obviously, I wasn't grateful or lucky that my mother died. I just wanted to be clear on that. But lots of people lose a parent and they don't come into a large inheritance like I did. And you could say, well, you lucky trust funder, you don't have to you've never had to slave away, like a wage slave, like most millennials. And yeah, you're right. That's a good criticism of me. It doesn't come without a certain weight on your shoulders, because why me? Why do I deserve this? It makes one's life seem more meaningless. I give thanks to God every day. And so I had more money than I knew what to do with when I was 20 years old. Just close to being finished university. And I started traveling when I was 22, not long after finishing university. And I went to India. I volunteered in India for 11 weeks in New Delhi, in a slum, where I was teaching English, got to travel around the north of India, met lots of cool people, mostly Westerners. Came back to Toronto, worked in museums. Well, a museum, later another museum, historical museums. And that was cool. I always liked history. It was a public job, public sector job. And I was like, well, I want to keep traveling. So I went back to the volunteering thing. I went to Ghana for 9 weeks in 2010. India was 2008. So the Ghana 2010 for 9 weeks. Then Tanzania, like about 11, I don't know, like, forget, a few months in Tanzania, doing, teaching English, doing the same thing as I did in Ghana. What the hell was that? Anyways, so this was all up till now, up till Tanzania. It was an amazing experience. I was having the time of my life. That really, in Africa, in India, I wasn't so happy because I wasn't smoking weed, and at this time in my life, I was still smoking a lot of weed, and I've cut that back recently. I don't do it so much anymore for health reasons, for spiritual reasons. I know people say, weed is a million different things to a million different people. It's good, it's bad, it's neutral, it's everything. So I still use it from time to time. But at that time, being able to smoke weed in Ghana was amazing. And let's go around here a little bit. And basically, I still hadn't learned that total freedom is actually quite scary. Well, I was starting to learn because, you have a few stops here and there in Europe, London, Amsterdam, Latvia, Germany. Went with my brother at the time to, I can't get through here, or can I? Is there a way through? Oh, it's tight. I went to Germany, like Frankfurt, and no, we didn't spend time in Frankfurt. We just changed trains there. Well, we spent time in, where was it? Well, we started in Switzerland, like Zurich, that kind of area in Switzerland. I don't know if it's the geese are returning, or it's just now that all the snow has melted, all that goose feces has been exposed to the air. It's pretty gross. So, wow, a high school, look at that. And back in the day when I used to be in high school, I don't know, when I got the idea to travel, it was kind of maybe from studying anthropology, studying geography, you get inspired, know about the rest of the world, go and have that experience for yourself, and you get indoctrinated with ideas like Western culture has suppressed and oppressed the rest of the world, and you got to do your fair part to volunteer because you are guilty. I'm not saying that was so overt. There's maybe a little touch of it though going on. And you know, anthropology, and I studied that in university. It's in some ways a perverted discipline, because we got Franz Boas telling you everything is relative. Franz Boas was one of the founders of anthropology in the early 20th century. And, you know, it's feeding into the idea that, you know, Western culture, there's nothing necessarily superior about it. All values are relative. And he went and studied the Inuit in the early 20th century. He lived with the Inuit, and I was watching this documentary on him. Like, man, the Inuit lived very primitively, and it just looked like a very rough life. It didn't look so great, but he's painting it in this nice way. And I'm not saying that the peoples I got to experience and live with are primitive like the Inuit. I'm just saying that was feeding into the sort of thinking that was leading me to be very open-minded. Nothing wrong with being open-minded, but in a way, you know, in a weird way, being a liberal when I was younger, there were some benefits to encourage me to want to travel, and then the funny thing is you start learning about why liberalism is bad, even though liberalism encouraged me to be open-minded and travel. And then you get taken advantage of. You start to realize, oh, all the taxi drivers here are trying to screw us off. I mean, that's a very common experience, or just people in general. You know, they look on white people as money bags, walking money bags. Money grows on trees in the white man's land. Let me just find a place for my bike. So, you know, I kind of telling this story in a haphazard way, but I was so lucky. But, you know, for example, in Europe, with my brother, what are you gonna do? You're gonna eat Subway sandwiches for dinner? You know, you're gonna eat fast food all the time? You're gonna feel like an idiot because Europeans speak English and you can't speak their language. That was an encouragement for me to study French, study German to an extent. I never really finished it, but I have studied some German, some French, because you know, you meet foreigners traveling in South America, for example. You meet Europeans and they can all communicate in English, but then they're speaking in their language. It's more just a sense of like, hey, I want to be on their level. We're like children to them. North Americans, Canadians, and Americans, we're like children to them because they can communicate in their own language, and then they like, oh, you silly Americans, you silly Canadians. Oh, we can speak in your language, but you have no idea what we're speaking or what we're saying. But I know I'm getting kind of off topic here, but this is kind of just a travel story, and you know, having total freedom to come back to Toronto when I please, to work at that museum. It starts, you know, having the security of that public sector job. It was a demoralizing experience working in a museum, demoralizing because it was a unionized job. It has to be unionized. I hate unions. Maybe some unions are good, but that union, the representative of the union, was the most corrupt individual I've ever seen in my life. He did everything he could to get out of work, or you know, not to have to do very much. His attitude was cynical. He would make denigrating comments all the time. He was just a very unpleasant person to be around. There was another guy with him that had been working there since the 80s, the two of them. They were in their 50s, and you know, there's no way you can fire these people unless they do something really, really bad. It's just a pathetic environment to work in. But that's the freedom to always have an income. I could still be working there today if I wanted to, but I quit back in 2012. I went to South America. I stayed in Peru for 3 months. I had a great time in South America. That was the second time of my life. I met a lot of good people. Again, you meet foreigners because you don't really get to know the local people. That's a very special thing where you actually make a real friend with a local person in a foreign country, a non-Western country. That happened to me in Ghana with Paul. It's never happened to me practically ever again. You can make acquaintances, but it's very unusual to make a good friend. Part of the reason I made a good friend with, with Paul in Ghana was because of Christianity, was because of the British Empire, the English language being some common ground between us, Christian morals being some common ground between us, weed being common ground between us, something we like to do. And so South America was good, went to Brazil, Argentina, Brazil, and I just wanted it to keep going. At this time in my life, I'm about 25 or 26. I'm still blue pill, still trying to chase women. Not chase women, but, like still think that, oh, wow, like I met some really cute women there, and they're Americans, and maybe, who knows, maybe they would like me, and we can stay in touch. And then, slowly starting to realize that this is a fantasy, let it go. Just that's not, love is not a real thing. I've talked about romantic love, that kind of stuff. It's not real. Let that fantasy go. So I know I'm talking about more things than just total freedom in this video. I know. I'm trying to I try to make that my common theme here. So basically, it wasn't until I went back to Latin America again, this would have been around 2014? No, 2013, around that time. Yeah, 2013. I went to Guatemala for 2 weeks. It might have been longer. I went to Quetzaltenango, also known as Xela, this town up in the mountains in Guatemala where I was studying Spanish. I studied Spanish in Peru and in Toronto. I studied Spanish in other places. See this, there's no way to get through there. No one's gonna disturb me here. And in that depressing, hazy town up in the mountains where it was just like, I was there in September or October, that time of the year, and it was just like a constant mist of this like drizzle. It was drafty, cool, and just a depressing place to be. Just like there's no parks in Latin America. There's nothing like what we have here in Toronto, where I'm just like biking around in parks. People don't even have yards there. Everything is like barbed wire and spikes, and once it's past 9 p.m., everything boards up. It gets it gets kind of a little menacing. It was a little menacing. I felt like I was a phantom in that town, haunting the town, in my black poncho and my tilly hat, because it was raining. And I was a phantom, and that was a horrible experience. It was so depressing. I had to get out of there. Part of the reason was I hadn't given myself time to cut down the weed. So all of a sudden traveling, and then you don't have, I was able to do that in India. Before India, I was smoking like every day, and then I went to India 11 weeks, no weed at all. And I could have gotten weed in India. People I knew were smoking weed, but I didn't get any, because I was like trying to prove to myself that I didn't need it. And I was able to do that. I refrained 100% for those 11 weeks, but it was still a miserable experience. Partly because of not necessarily only because of the withdrawal. I know I'm going back and forth here. I'm going back and forth in time, but because of New Delhi is a very polluted city to live in. The volunteering experience. I've talked about volunteering before, about how you're not really getting anything done. It's mostly useless. It's better than just backpacking, because at least you have the semblance of something to do. But generally, what do you expect to do when you don't even speak the local language? When you're plopped down in the middle of a slum where you've never been there before, you have no real, you're not accustomed to Indian culture. You'd have to spend a long, long time there to start to make a difference. And it's not your culture, it's not your country. What do you expect to do? So that's what, those are some of the reasons why India was a very stressful experience. Not enough to imprint upon me that this notion of endless travel, not that I ever had the idea of endlessly wanting to travel, but that it is in fact quite terrifying to have complete freedom, we actually need to be tied down. We actually need to have some project to be working on in our life, something that can give us a sense of accomplishment over the long term. Not that I didn't want that when I was younger, but my God, did it ever hit me like a wall in Guatemala. And yet I still traveled again. I went back home, and then I went to Costa Rica, and Costa Rica was terrible. I wanted to get out of that country after a week, because you're just on your own and you meet all these other people, like you meet other foreigners, and it gives a very bad taste. You meet a lot of these expats who are kind of burnt out, and I don't want to say they're like new agey types, some of them are, and just, it's like, wow, like a lot of just, I don't want to say bad people, but people that are very hard to relate to. These expats, these Dutch, Australians, Americans, Italians, whatever, they end up in these other countries. And that could be me too. But if I end up being someone like that, then it'll probably be hard for people who travel to relate to me, because it's like, wow, that person's just in their world. They were lucky to make good friends here and establish something. You're alone. You're essentially alone. You walk around cities and you can't eat much other than fast food, or if you try to eat the local food, that's fine too, but you just don't know what you're doing. You're out of your element, you're out of your place, but you want to escape the city that you came from, or your local town or whatever. But at the end of the day, we are products of our place. Like, you walk around and just everyone is doing their routine. You can see, kids are going to school, people are working, people have real lives, and good for them. And you have no life at all. You're just a traveler. It's a traveler, a wanderer. I've been there, I've done it for over off and on for 5 years. And then I've also went to Korea, South Korea for a short time for 9 days. And in Hong Kong, I was on my own in Korea. I was visiting my English teaching friend. And then another 9 days in Hong Kong with my dad. But especially in Korea, because Hong Kong is a bit more westernized. There's more mixes of people there. But in Korea, it's like 99% Korean. And I felt so out of place there. Even though, my friend is teaching English, at least I had my friend there, but still, it's like, other than you can smoke cigarettes, you can drink. I don't drink alcohol now either. So what are you to do, really? What are you to do if you don't like to drink, and you don't like to smoke cigarettes, and you can't get weed if you're looking for weed? Well, you walk around during the day, you go to museums, you take the transit system, and unless you're willing to devote years of your life prior to this to learn Korean, you are so isolated. Psychologically, culturally isolated. It's very unpleasant. Very unpleasant. I've been in some very dark places, and but I've been blessed to be able to have the money to do this. I've been blessed to be able to meet Paul, and just to embark on some projects in Ghana. Hope to go back there soon. And what can I say? I'm glad I had that experience to do all this traveling, but even to get out of Toronto, it's like a different universe. Like to go like 100 kilometers north to like Lake Huron last June when I went with my friend. My God, my goodness, that's a different world. People are different there. People are nice, but it's just a different world. And it's right to think that the city is like a prison. It's a prison for your mind, for your soul, for your body. I'm a city slicker. I'm an urbanite. I don't drive. I use my bike. I live in a working class neighborhood filled with immigrants with whom I share nothing in common. When I come back from traveling in a foreign country, it's like I don't even have a home country anymore. It's gone. This is welcome to the 21st century Western urban world. There is no real home for you anymore. You're floating in space. That's terrifying. But
coffee, drink, beer, tea.
What's that?
Coffee, drink, or beer, tea. Drink.
Nice.
I want me some drink. Non-specific drink. Non-specific drink, please.
But it is most terrifying when you're actually, at least you're in a new place away from your home country, even though your home country is decaying and melting, just like the snow is melting here. So I guess that's pretty much all I have to say. There's probably some other points I could bring up. This is just sort of a ramble about traveling, and everyone wants to have that experience. I wish you do have the experience to travel. Don't necessarily be like, oh, the tourist itinerary, gotta go, do this, go to Cuba, or go to Mexico, and then you're on the itinerary, and they give you this and that, and then you go through the package tour. That's silly too. But those people, they know that they have lives that they're gonna get back to very soon, and they're not backpackers. That's silly too. But backpacking is silly. I don't know what that noise is up. Backpacking is for some people, and you can do it. It's dangerous in some sense. There's a lot of naive backpackers out there. There's a lot of people that they just go backpacking in dangerous places. Young women do it. Young white women. We've heard of what happened in Morocco to those Scandinavian women that got murdered, and you encounter just a shocking amount of naivety among fellow Westerners. And I've hiked to the top of Mount Kilimanjaro in Tanzania, the top of Africa. I've lived in the Amazon jungle and hiked through rainforest in moss that was up to my knees. I've taken ayahuasca in Peru. I have, been to a few other interesting places, but at the end of the day, it wasn't all necessary. A lot of it was kind of a waste of money, but I'm glad I don't regret any of it. I don't regret any of it. But my goodness, I don't want to repeat this anymore. I could have been traveling some more, but no, I will travel again, and I recommend it, but man, you gotta have some plan. You gotta have some reason for being there. You know what I mean? You gotta have some reason. The whole, I'm just gonna go to a place. It's like, yeah, maybe for a very short time, but otherwise you get anxiety, you get depression.
I look like such a tourist right now.
That's the sober reality. Hasta luego, amigos.